Prednji plan.
Drage slušateljice i slušatelji, ja sam Tea Truta, a ovo je audio epizoda Prednjeg plana, podcasta o arhitekturi i urbanizmu. U ovoj epizodi smo se malo izmakli iz lokalnog konteksta, odnosno snimana je tijekom Internacional Social Housing Festivala u Barceloni. Konferencija Međunarodnog festivala javnog stanovanja inicijativa je Housing Europa, Europske federacije javnog zadružnog i socijalnog stanovanja i njezinih članova i saveznika koja je prisutna u 25 zemalja, a ove godine je održana u Barceloni. Ovogodišnji fokus je bio na stambenim politikama koje je Barcelona uvela kako bi povećala fond priuštivog stanovanja svojim stanovnicima. To je bila idealna prilika da obavim razgovor s članicom arhitektonske kooperative Lacol i članicom Dinama Lalijom davi. Lacol je široj publici poznat kao arhitektonska kooperativa koja je projektirala i izgradila prvu neprofitnu zadružnu stambenu zgradu La Borda u Barceloni. No iako je medijski fokus češće ostao na arhitekturi njihovog objekta, bitniji aspekt njihovog rada je onaj razvijanja održivih sistema zadružnog stanovanja, kao i participativnih modela rada sa zajednicom. Uz hektični raspored konferencije i obaveza koje je Lali imala tih dana, epizoda je snimana u kratkoj pauzi u jednom restoranu u blizini Kopolisa, tako da se odmah slušateljima ispričavam za pozadinsku buku. No možda ona doprinosi doživljaj okruženja. Audio epizoda u svoj format ima i transkript i titlove priložene YouTube video. U razgovoru nam se pridružio doktorant Politehničkog sveučilišta u Barceloni i drug Jere Kuzmanić, koji s Lali surađuje na zagovaračkim i participativnim projektima vezanim uz urbanizam, kako bi vam zajedno što bolje dočarali pokrete vezane uz zadružno stanovanje u Kataloniji. Poslušajte pa da zajedno zamislimo neke bolje stambene uvjete i u našoj sredini. We have today with us Lali, who is a member of the architectural cooperative Lacol and also member of the Foundation for the Consolidation of Cooperative Housing called Dinamo. You are also, hi Lali. Hi. And we have with us Jere Kuzmanić, which I will say more in the introduction. Why are you here? And
hi Jere.
And you're a member of a cooperative waiting to build a house, right? Too. Okay. Sotrak. Okay. So the first thing I would like to talk to you about is about Lacol. So it's an architectural cooperative. How did it all start? How does it function? And what's the story behind it? What's the difference with the, regular architectural firm and what's the way of working in an architectural cooperative?
Okay. We meet each other in the university when we were students, and we do the career together. The diplomas together, and when we finished our studies, and during the studies we rent a space in Poble Sec. It's a neighborhood, and to have our studies and our works, and then we start to work as an office, but a very informal one, and all of us were working in other offices, and step by step we could have more works, and then to have our own projects. And during our final final project of the thesis, the final thesis, and most of us we did it in the neighborhood in projects related to the neighborhood movements, and so because of that we get in touch.
Are you all from the neighborhood?
No one of us. No one of us were in Sands, but now all of us, or maybe all of us, are living here.
Okay.
And it has been during these 14 years, so now on. And
Okay, and what's it like to work in an architectural cooperative? How do you manage, working together for so long? Now it's been long, yeah. And you have a lot of projects. I think it's quite different than some kind of, other type of architectural firm?
At the beginning, we had very little projects, so all of us were working all together, 14 people in one project, and it was like difficult, but it was amazing. And well, now we have more projects, and usually we work together like 3 people more or less in each project, or 3 or 4. But we have like some collective spaces or collective designing spaces, how we call it, meetings, to discuss, to discuss about the projects or something like this.
And you do a bunch of scales of projects, if I got it right, like from architectural to urban design, even some like exhibitions and stuff like that.
Yeah, yes. At the beginning, we were doing some like participative design and like public spaces or very related to social movements. For example, here we are now near in Cambatlló. It's an old fabric, and we were with the neighborhood in the fight for com explicar una mica la sessió de
Actually, the Cambatlló was an old factory that practically, in a short, it was assigned to be a green and red area in a zone plan, so social and green space of the neighborhood, but it was out of function. And there was a strong neighborhood movement to actually do something with it, because it was the only green and red area on the plan that the neighborhood could develop. And you got involved in the process of negotiating the not only renovation but the whole regeneration of the area together, or in the beginning grassroots against the municipality, and then later also the process of negotiation.
And in this movement is where La Borda was born, a cooperative housing, and we were involved in it. Some of my colleagues are living in La Borda, 5 of them, and we participate there not only as, well, some of them as users, but an architectural team, and we were involved in all this process.
How did you ended up doing cooperative housing with La Borda as a part of the story? Was it a conscious decision, or it was just something that happened to you?
I think it was like related to Cambatlló. With all the neighborhood, we were thinking which needs we should or we could resolve as a collective, and one of these was the housing. And here, all of us, or well, in this neighborhood, but in Barcelona, it's difficult to have to rent a house or something, and we were with other people in the neighborhood that they are in cooperative movements, like working cooperative, like in
like
this.
a social economy, different kind of like food-related cooperatives, education-related cooperatives.
And some people started this idea of a housing cooperative project. Here in Catalonia, there wasn't. At the past, there was cooperative housing, but it was for selling or
For profit?
for profit. And didn't exist this model of kind of use or using.
This like right to housing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right to use.
Right to use. Yeah.
Right
Okay.
to use. And we were inspired in Andel model or in Fugvam in Uruguay, and we didn't know anything, and we were knowing these models, and I don't know, it was a really difficult project because there were no reference here in Catalonia. It was the first one. Like at the same time there was this, and Princesa, it's another project, but it was really new. And after that, this model has increased or
Expanded.
expanded.
What are kind of the specifics for people that don't know much about it of planning or designing housing for cooperative living?
I think the first thing is that these projects are self-managed for from the collective. So people are in the center, and it's really difficult. It's really different by doing
by every project.
Yes, or public housing, for example, that there is no
But they
people
always-
who are going to live there.
But there's always like this part that's for the community or for the people living in the house,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
There is one, I think, important thing is that the important difference is that actually architects participate in a much larger process than just designing a building. So they actually take part in forming or even educating the group that wants to do it on all the steps of the way. And also it includes also not only designing but negotiating, administration. Then design is just a small part of it.
Yeah.
And then after that all the construction and execution. But on the other hand, it's also that the user is involved in a much larger part than usually. So they don't just come and buy a flat, but they actually are involved from the moment of choosing the land, the plot, to contacting architects, to forming the association, to constructing a financial model. So it's kind of mutual in both senses. It includes architects.
I know that even, and I think that's interesting, you had to fight for La Borda, for the change of the regulations, you had to build the garage, and yeah, can you tell us something about that story?
See, I think La Borda was new of a lot of things, but this is a big thing or a big issue. It was reached because here in Catalonia and in Barcelona it's obligatory.
Yeah, it's obligatory.
It's obligatory to build a garage, and you must build one car place or site for each housing. And it's very expensive.
Lower than in Croatia, just so you know.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, but it's really expensive because it must be
Digging.
in the underground, and it's almost 20% of the cost of a building, and not only the economic thing, but la parte ambiental, ¿cómo se diría?
La parte?
Ambiental, sí.
The environmental context
impact
was also,
that
Impact,
makes the garage. So La Borda, and they didn't have a car, and they couldn't afford having a car. So they say we won't do it, and it was a really large change, or not fighting, but trying to change the negotiations of the regulation, because it's law, and because of the border now the law was changed, and housing, social housing all over the city can
can
do it without apartment. So it's really important because of the affordable housing, because it's a really economic impact, and because of the ambiental or sustainability impact.
Yeah, were there any, like in everything that happened since, were there any changes to the regulations or laws or urban plans that were made from the municipality in Barcelona to make it easier to have cooperative housing?
Are there any other, I mean, usually people in Croatia don't know actually the composition of the public support to cooperative housing. So not only if they were changing the laws and the regulations, but if they have, what kind of helps did you receive from the municipality?
I think there are three types of things. The first one is to having a plot where you can build the building, and public land is decir, public municipality can
Give for lease For long-term lease.
For long-term lease a plot, and this is a very big issue because private land is really expensive in Barcelona area or in Catalonia. So the first thing is to have a public plot. The second thing is the subsides, and it can be directly economic subsides or some strategies for the financing or the funding.
Okay.
For the funding.
Yeah, funding. Also, it can be in different types of subsidies. It can go for designing and projecting and kind of the whole process of preparation, but also it can go directly for a certain type of
or the mensual fee. For example, there is a subsidy for the mensual fee. And the third kind of help is like these regulations or changing the municipality taxes or things like that, or the garage, like this, to change regulations to be more affordable.
And this kind of new government that you had did respond to everything that happened in La Borda and was kind of a help in producing that.
All the new government.
Yes. I think this government has done different kinds of policies and in these ways, and through going to the private market, they made a law that it's called like 30%, because every new building in Barcelona and private buildings, 30% of the housing must be social housing.
Yeah, I saw that. That's a great thing.
This is interesting because they have no more land, or it's difficult to have more public land, and this strategy is to go to the private and have social housing through the private land. And it's interesting this law, or it's not law, it's a regulation.
Regulation.
Yeah.
And so we can talk a bit now. You're a part of La Dinamo too. Why was La Dinamo formed, and how does it function? What's the deal with La Dinamo?
It's not Dinamo from Zagreb, I have to say. Local football club from Zagreb.
La Dinamo was founded on 2016, I guess. And it was funded between two cooperatives, Lacol and La Ciutat Invisible, and we were technical teams that worked in La Borda, and the main goal of La Dinamo is to support new cooperatives projects. And the first thing we did as a Dinamo was an agreement with La Borda to replicate the Borda's model, and all the knowledge and the learnings that had been during the Borda process or construction or building, and to apply it for new projects. And La Dinamo is a foundation that gives technical support to a group of people that wants to start cooperative housing projects. And this is
and you guide them through the process, basically.
Yes. With economic, jury, architectural, and the group
social self-management issue.
Yes.
Can I ask a very simple question that I think is very helpful for Croatian audience? I mean, there are some conversation in certain circles about cooperative housing, and more or less there is MOBA present in Croatia through Zadruga Otvorena Arhitektura and ZEF, and it's not a completely new thing, but there is no experience of actually somebody going through all the steps of how the Zadruga becomes Zadruga and how the building becomes a building and how it looks after that point. Can you, I know it's not simple, but can you, in 5 steps or how many steps you want, explain how one cooperative can...
4 steps. We describe it in 4 steps.
The last one is jump into Provalia.
The first one is the group. it's the most important thing to
The
meet
group of residents.
the group of residents and yes,
the co-op, yeah.
the co-op and the vision, or the, I don't know how to say it, to define the objectives of the group, because every group have some different objectives, or I don't know, maybe some details.
Needs.
Some needs. Yes, I think this is the first step. The second step is to
this
create.
also involves formalization. This group has to
No,
form
the second step, you must formalize the cooperative. We work only specific with autonomous cooperatives, and each group create a new cooperative. So the second step is to create this cooperative and to achieve or to have the plot or the building where to develop your project. So
paso.
This is a very big step, and a very difficult step, and a lot of groups die before this step. So when you have the land or the plot, it's almost for sure you will end the promotion. But if you don't get a plot, maybe your group will disappear, because it's difficult to stay for 5 years waiting for a plot or something like that. So when you have the plot, maybe it's almost sure you will finish your project. So the third step would be all the design and the license, the funding,
building permission,
the funding, etc. And the last step is to build or.
Financing is also, I think, one thing that maybe goes in parallel with all the steps, but like how to finance the whole thing.
Yes, but you need a plot to the most hard steps are the plot and the finance. They are the two most difficult steps.
Okay, and how do the Dinamo helps actually with finding the financing the people that are in cooperative too, right?
Yes. Here in Catalonia there are some very few credit cooperatives or ethic bank like Fiare or COP57, that is a credit cooperative, and there in one hand, and in the other hand there is like more or less like public bank. It's not very really public, but similar. And these three entities that are funding this kind of projects, and traditional or conventional bank are not playing this role, because they are not interested in this model. They can understand it.
They think it's risky. I mean, also as you in Laborda had 150 different hypothecs loans. From this perspective of the project, it's more safe, because if one fails, it's easier to substitute. But from the perspective of a bank, it's very risky, because they don't trust something that is not unified, coherent, there's no central governance, so they expect that these groups, as she explained, in many cases they die, and they find it as a risky economic transaction.
Yes, and because the banks, they want an individual mortgage, and we are trying to have a collective mortgage, and they cannot understand that, and it's the difference between all of this, and this movement is fighting for having or for maintaining the collective ownership and the collective mortgage. And individually you don't have a mortgage, so you can enter or go out from the cooperative without an individual mortgage. And it's really important, because there are some banks that are maybe thinking of funding these projects, and they are asking for or making individual mortgage, and we say this is a really a big problem, because it goes to the main es com que realment pone en crisis la parte más importante del modelo, que es no tener o sigui, como que la responsabilidad sea colectiva, ¿no?
The weakest point of the whole model is collective responsibility.
Yeah.
And it also means not only in terms of money, but also in terms of time, because usually what you compensate is with money, with not having money, you're compensating with time, which means that people during the time they divorce, they separate, the members die, their kids are born, they lose the jobs, and that kind of security long-term wise is very hard to lock into one single investment. And one of the hardest part is to create not only credibility of a group, but also internal trust and kind of formal negotiation of which are the rules of the game, so that people stay from the first day, they think it's interesting, until the last day. Of course they can leave, but it has to be negotiated, regulated, and people have to know what are the conditions, otherwise the risk is just becoming high.
And if the project is in a big city, it's easy if someone goes out to the cooperative, it's easy to have new people or new cooperatives. But if the project is in rural areas or like this, the risk is that if some people leave the cooperative, maybe it's not so easy to find new people who wants to live there. And if the cooperative cannot be full of people, they cannot pay the mortgage or something. So it's a big thing, a big important thing.
Can I add just one thing that maybe also to help a little bit illustrate the scale of things, what is going on in Catalonia. So now we are at this social housing festival, and everybody is speaking about Barcelona having 1,000 cooperative units and having I don't know how many promotion.
50 promotions and 1,000 units more or less.
Yeah. So, but what would be actually, what in my opinion is interesting in terms of how Dinamo works is also this territorial part. So can you explain first of all how many cooperatives there are, and if they are that you are now or in construction or they are already built or whatever, two groups are forming. The other question is if there are some small differences in the model, because what is very interesting is how you actually sometimes negotiate your position with the local municipalities, especially smaller municipalities that actually they are initiators, and how you behave as a Dinamo in that case. What kind of legal framework happens for this? You can do it?
I can try it. In La Dinamo now we are with more or less 14 projects. 4 of them are in living over there, and the other ones are they have the plot, and they are in different steps of the promotion. Some of them are at the beginning, and 3 of them are during the construction or the building. And they are very different sizes of these projects. The smallest one is like 4-unit project, a rural one, and the biggest one now it's 40 units here in Can Batlló and Priu. And some of them are like a plot and they have to build a building, and some of them there is some cases that we could buy a building already renovated, so they didn't have to
go to
reconstruction. Yes. Yeah. And so they could enter living in, for example, La Diversa it was a building that they could. We did more or less a call for people for people that wanted to live in cooperatives. So in 2 months, 7 group of people applied for this call, and in 2 months they were living together, and it was so much faster that they didn't talk themselves how we want to live together, and they are doing the community during the living.
The living,
yeah. And it's really different because usually these projects are like 7 years before living.
And you get to know each other very well.
Yeah. Or La Closca de Lleida, that it was like 3 months until go to live. And in Lleida, it's a city in the west of Catalonia, and they even didn't know the cooperative model. So, well, it was really fast, and it's different ways of entering in this kind of projects. Yes, more or less. Which was the other question?
Well, this thing when the local municipality gets involved,
they are interested.
when there are call-outs or there are some kind of a competition, how this whole system works from the side of administration.
Yeah, but this thing, like, I didn't know that Barcelona has a model of competitions. Recently they had for the one in near Barceloneta. What's the name? I cannot say it.
Yes.
So there's some kind of way of making a competition that the city. How does that competition even work?
Yeah. In Barcelona, first of all, they did 2 pilots. And it was not a competition. They gave the plot, one was Laborde and the other one Princesa, and after that, that were like experimental pilots, and they did 2 competitions, one with 7 plots and another one with 3 plots, and the problem was that that they were making compete people that want to resolve their need of housing, and there are people that are involved in this kind of organizations or social solidarity economy that don't want to compete. So it was really like
weird thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and there was 2 or 3 cases of plots that were like in a que van anar a tribunals, que acabaran...
They then ended up in the legal procedures like sues and stuff like that.
So, because of that, the city council decided to make it different and to make an agreement with organizations that
join
together to decide which plot would be for each project. Mm-hmm. So in this new way of negotiation all the actors are involved in deciding which plot are going to which project. I think it's a very difficult, it's not easy to resolve it, but at the same time all of the actors are involved in or have responsibility of getting or negotiate or getting agree for this. I think it's not easy, but I think it's interesting this way they have developed after the 2 competitions that were really difficult. And around Catalonia, other city councils are trying, a very few of them, because it's not easy for them. They don't have the knowledge and they don't have enough technical support or internal technical support, so it's not easy for them, but some city councils are trying to done some competitions, and well, we are...
it's like a public call, as much as I understood. It's like they give a piece of land,
yes,
with a public call that actually expects people to form a group that involves a housing group, an architectural office, or usually cooperative, but it doesn't have to be, and somebody who is like a developer, which is kind of guiding everybody through the process, and you kind of apply as a consortium, and then they estimate who has the best type of things. And I know that in Germany the criteria they apply are sometimes not only financial, so they use, if you have elderly people or people with disabilities,
criteria or like that.
In the one co-op in Barceloneta that we went to 2 days ago, they told us that they think one of the criteria why they won was that they were all from Barceloneta, the whole group.
And they
were involved in the community, and that was a big factor with them.
That's very important, because it actually gives some added value to the whole process, because as cooperative housing is not only about avoiding profit-based housing, but it's also ways how we can produce some social value from the process, but also through housing as a dynamic, not as a building in a sense.
Yes. I think we told all the key parts. Maybe we can wrap up because we have to go.
No, we are okay with the time.
Yeah?
The Spanish time, they are probably not here. Cut
But
time.
to me, I think I just wanted to say, from a perspective of the three of us are architects, and from the perspective of the profession, to me the interesting thing is that you had a problem in your community as people or students with some specific tools that you knew how to use, and then in a few years you managed to produce a whole system.
Yeah.
And that's a really great thing to see, and you actually do the work that I think is supposed to be the work of the profession, not only designing but kind of changing the politics around space.
Yeah, I think
And
it's
making better circumstances for living.
for the others
Yeah.
to come after that, which is something we always forget in very successful projects, is that they are supposed to be replicated and not awarded,
Yeah.
And to me, I think the key word that you mentioned is the word of system. So what I find very nice about Lacol is that it's much more, or it's everything except architectural office, because
But it's really good architecture too, so...
well, that's a collateral success. No, but the thing is that to mention just few of the other projects, there is Coopolis, which is right here in Camp Batlló, which is an incubator for cooperatives on the level of whole Barcelona and Catalonia, which is not just an institution, but it's also a space that is designed under same principles, there was no kind of a public competition, blah blah, but it was actually kind of bottom up with a huge presence of the architectural cooperative in it. There is also now La Comunal, in which we spent some of the days
you
now.
should maybe explain a bit how La Comunal functions.
So what I wanted to just say, in the end, what happens is that if you follow certain a DNA of how you want to do things and know what you want to do things, you ended up producing or reproducing kind of an ecosystem that Lacol is now cooperative of architects, with the Dinamo as a kind of meta-cooperative for supporting the project, with other cooperatives being for financial issues, for the legal issues. So it creates kind of a really bottom-up idea that can provide not just space for living, but actually it provides the whole support for much more than just living. And that, in that sense, I speak about added value, because architects are not there just to design space, but they are there to really think deeply into how the market works, what we can do about it, what is our responsibility in the city, in the neighborhood.
Well, and I think
Also
in this
sense are interesting.
in these cases, I think it starts in our own needs, housing or no housing, working and developing cooperatives. So I think when you are when you have your own needs and you get involved with that, you are not designing for third person. You are in this movement not only as an architect, as a user. So I think and for us it's a value that when I am now guiding another group to have lived for myself this experience in my own skin, and I think it's a value because you know how they feel, because you have feel it. I think it's important, and for us it's I think we value this to work with our hands. I don't know how to call it, but
you didn't wait for things to change. You changed things, so you really did.
And they did it by there are two principles. One is what you say, hands-on. So you go there and you get dirty and you work with money, which is something architects
tend to avoid.
The budget is very important.
They like to do work with the money, but they like to work with the money on their account. They don't like to work with the money of other people and the problems that comes with the personal sensibilities. and that also means getting dirty. I mean, working the hard part of the game. But the other principle is again related to money. It's like as Mark Neelan is calling it, no bullshit investment, which is like architecture really not being about producing a fancy object and creating some kind of a perfect detail, a nice image, ideal picture of community and whatever we are trying to reproduce by design. But it's actually knowing what you can do, how far you can reach, and being extremely careful about resources of other people that you are using. And in that sense, creating something that I like the most about not only cooperative, but most of the architecture here in Catalonia is really sober and humble, which is what is make it really of a high quality and not very famous in the world, because it's not like a Dutch architecture yelling from all places.
But from an architectural point, that is really important, because when we went to La Borda and you talk about the energy sufficiency and thinking about that and how that produces even the architecture, but you weren't trying to produce the architecture, you were trying to produce an energy sufficient building.
You were actually trying to produce a low energy build to pay, and that was the way how the architecture was made.
Well, and we say if you have a few money, you must invest it very well in infrastructural things. You know, you can in 10 years paint the walls, but it's important where do you put your money. And if you have few money, you have to think very well where to invest it. I think it's because you cannot do all what would like to do, so you have to
prioritize.
But the interesting thing too with those all of the cooperative houses that I went to, they're all like organisms that are still everybody's finding ways for them to function better, and as the community changes or people get used to living together, that's how the building, like La Borda, is not finished. They told us it's not finished. It's like being finished as we live in it.
I mean, one of the best things about cooperative housing is not actually the cheap price, because what I'm saying all the time now is like you have to invest time, and that actually costs sometimes more than money. But the thing that you have in this process, people actually grew together. They become really a community.
They become a community.
Maybe you can say, just as an illustration, what happened with Sotrak, not to go into the juridical part, but like that you at the end were so much prolonged that you started to protest together, you started to discuss very existential questions. And the result of that is that, I mean, one day when you are old, you are not living in a way that you enter your building, climb to your flat and enter inside, but you are living with people you know, you fought for something with them, and you are connected with more than just the house in which you live.
Well, and our theory is that when you, not because we have invented, but in other countries that this system has developed, when there is a community in a neighborhood, it can resolve more needs, not only their own housing, but other
the whole community, the whole neighborhood,
and other fights and something. So I think the great value is not the architecture or the building, is the community, and this can do more things, not just only this building. And I think we should see it in some years, when there will be some communities living. So we say we are now investing a lot of time and energy in building projects, but the real thing is the community living, and what will they do during the years that are coming.
Yeah.
Els pròxims anys.
Coming years.
Yeah, to see all of, I just wanted to say, like, to see all of it and kind of talk to people and how it functions is kind of really positive, and you get a sense of a better future if you reproduce the model. I hope people that listen to this talk will maybe get the sense that it can happen in our local context too.
The optimism is the most essential base. Without
patience and optimism.
Without this, you stop on the step one. Well, if somebody wants to form a group for cooperative housing in Croatia, please call the number 091 x66 x66, and I'm selling olive oil.
Prednji plan.